Oh, it is. It is. I think dreams are, such a big part of people's lives. I mean, we tend to give all our attention to the waking hours, but it was such a delight to know that there was a show called The Dream Train, and that you did all this powerful stuff for people, because I think people need to hear it. They're focused on their waking
Yeah.
life, and when they realize how much power and insight comes from their sleeping life, from their dreaming part of their life, I think
Hmm.
sometimes it's just such an eye-opener for people. You see the whole world with fresh eyes, because you think, wow, there's this whole opportunity to gain wisdom, to learn about my future or my past, to connect with people, to connect
Yeah.
with experiences that and oftentimes they haven't really looked at. So I think
Hmm.
that's one of the privileges of doing something like dream yoga, or getting into an understanding of dreams, even on a very basic level, is such a really fresh way to see the world.
Hey friends, you're listening to All Aboard the Dream Train, a dream storytelling podcast where stories and experiences created by the unconscious brain are retold by the waking brain. A safe place where we explore and discuss the similarities and differences between the dreaming life and the waking life. All right, welcome back. Thanks again for listening. This is episode 10, and if this is your first time, just to give you a quick idea of how this works, each episode I interview a new guest. I ask them some questions about their sleep hygiene and sleep habits, and then I ask them to share a story about a dream or two that they've had and how those dreams have affected them in their waking life. I'm excited to share this episode with you today because one of the goals with this show was to interview people from all walks of life, meaning you don't have to be an expert dreamer, you don't have to be a scientist, or the best lucid dreamer ever. You just have to be a person that's had a dream before. And today's episode is a great example of polar opposites. On one hand, you have my guest that's been practicing dream work and yoga, is super in tune with his dream life. And then on the other hand, you have me. I've had a significant dream, not totally in tune with the dream life. I'm just trying to get better sleep at this point. So if the subject matter is new to you, I think you're going to be able to follow along. And if you're very in tune with your dream life and yoga and your body in the state of REM sleep, I think you'll still be able to get a lot out of this episode. Before I introduce my guest, he has a book coming out. He's a co-author of Chaos to Clarity. That book is coming out November 19th. Under the description, it says, "Witness firsthand the challenges that men and women from around the world faced head-on and how, through adversity, they became stronger and happier." I can't speak for anybody else's stories in the book, but if they're anything like my guest's story, it might be something I have to pick up. The book is by Patricia Caganeo. Sorry if I butchered that. And also Kathleen O'Keefe Conovas. Her story was on episode 9, the last episode. So if you haven't heard her story yet, it's beautiful. Go check it out. All right, let's get to it. My guest today is a writer, author, dreamer, father, a healer, a teacher, and like everybody else, he's a student of life. Please welcome aboard Altair Shayam.
It's a pleasure to speak with you and an honor to speak with you.
You too, Mason. A true honor. Really, really. You touch so many people in such deep ways. So I'm just privileged to be part of this too. So thank you.
Absolutely. It's so cool to hear. Will you tell anybody that's listening your name, age, and location?
Sure. So my name's Altair. I live in Japan. I live right next to a very ancient Zen temple that was built around 700 AD. So I feel like I'm in this sacred space of connecting with, the past, the ancient past. And I'm 58. so 58 years old. I've got a little daughter who's 5 years old, and my wife is Japanese, and we've lived in Japan now going on 10 years.
Very cool. Where are you from?
I'm originally from New Zealand, and I used to live in the States. Yeah, I used to live down Palos Verdes way, and then I lived up in Palo Alto. So I've had my walk through in the US and loved it. I've been to Portland, loved that area. That was
cool.
I had a really wonderful experience there, because I was doing Vedic counseling, so helping people understand their lives from the ancient Vedic point of view. That was a really wonderful time.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What are some of your hobbies or your passions, Altair?
I love the mystical part of life. So you can find me out in the mountains. You can find me on retreats. I love being under the stars. I love eating berries of every kind that you could possibly put in front of me. I like yoga and meditation. I do a lot of sports. I'm an outdoor sort of person, so I like swimming, biking, hiking. Yeah, but especially the mountains. I love being up high. That does something to me. It turns me on, switches my heart on. And when I'm up there amongst the stars on the top of a mountain, that's like wow, you can't beat that.
It's a very special place.
Yeah.
Just being out in nature in general.
Yeah, it sure is. Sure is. So I love the outdoors. That's a real Kiwi, New Zealand kind of thing, is to, be out. They always say we were born in a tent, and I kind of believe them.
Well, I can also relate. Being in the Pacific Northwest, there's there's always something close by they can do outdoors.
Yeah. Oh, you're so right. Great area where you are. There's a lot of forest. Yeah, Big Sur. Yeah, I loved traveling through Big Sur when I was there. I spent a lot of time camping around there. So beautiful.
Yeah, that's on the list. Me and my girlfriend have plans to do that coming up here in the next 6 months. So I'm really excited to see Big Sur.
Oh, gorgeous area. The US is so lucky to have these enormous spaces. I mean, you kind of forget every little state's like a country all on its own. When you come from New Zealand, which is so little, the states is like, oh, you cross over this this boundary and you're suddenly in a whole different set of laws, or a different set of mindsets, or a different set of ways of looking at life. It's really amazing. Very interesting.
Yeah. And then, how would you describe yourself?
Well, I'm, as I said, I love the mystical life. So I describe myself as a mystic. I've had a lot of mystical experiences from when I was a very little kid, right from the age of 2. And I'm also a writer. So I'm an author, and I've written a lot of books over the years, and I do healing work with people. And I'm currently, and I'm also a teacher. I teach children. So I've taught children of all ages, both about the awakened brain, and I also do performing arts like dance, music, voice, musicals, that kind of thing. And I run a program with a friend of mine, Kevin Shaninger, called Raising Our Vibration, and we work with people in the subtle energy states and meditation. So I've done that for quite a while. Yeah, I love it.
That's amazing. When you say you do healing, is there a type of problem people come to you with that's more common than others? What do you see the most of, I guess?
Sure. Mostly it's people who are either stressed, struggling with a job that they feel they're not suited to, or with a relationship that they feel uncomfortable and don't know what to do, and of course with physical healing. So the way I've approached in the past, I was a Vedic astrologer some years ago, and I used to do that professionally. So I'll sit down, I'll ask them for their time of birth and date, and I look at what's current, what's present, like what they're struggling with, and then we go into it's more an experience. So I guide them into a subtle state of meditation, and then really incredible things come out of that experience. I'll give you a quick example. So when I was in the States, I went to a party, and it was a friend of mine who was a yoga teacher. And near the end of the night, she said, I've got a couple of friends who are, they're married, but they're getting a divorce and they don't know what to do. Would you talk to them? And I said, well, I'm at a party, but when do you want me to do it? And she said, oh, could you do it before they go? So anyway, I just asked them their birth dates and sat down and drew up a couple of charts by hand, and then spoke to them about it. And by the end of it, they were in tears. They couldn't stop crying. It was really quite amazing. And then she said, what did you do? And I said, well, I just spoke to them about life and about, seeing their relationship with fresh eyes and being present and, caring and loving and sharing things and they shared really deeply. And so she said, they went off, and I didn't think any more about it. But then the following morning, I was staying overnight. This was in Qualicum Beach, actually, in Canada at that stage. And following morning, there were 50 people lined up outside her house, and they all wanted appointments. So that was kind of my introduction to the whole. And this was some year. This was like going back 20 odd years that I did that.
Wow.
And so I moved up and down, moved through Canada and did it, and then down through the States. And yeah, it was wonderful. Very powerful way to see the world and meet people. And at that stage, I wasn't doing it by charging. I did it by donation, which in Maori from New Zealand is called koha. And so people used to give me tea sets, tickets to the movies, they'd pay for my, my next petrol, the gas thing in this car refill. Yeah, it was just amazing. It was just really, really wonderful. Very, very.
That's really cool. I'm sure you met a lot of really, really cool people and made a lot of really great connections through that as well.
Yeah, I sure did. So that kind of was how the healing evolved. And what tended to happen is that people were, they wanted something out of life. So I'd just say, what do you want? And then they'd tell me. So I'd say, well, it's going to come true, and it'll come true. I'd look at the chart, say it'll work in this time frame. And inevitably it did. And I think the power of belief, the power of our infinite possibilities in our life, that infinite potential, when you really get in touch with spirit, it starts to work. And I think because I was dealing with such a large number of people, it was getting into thousands by the time that I stopped doing it for a while, because it got a bit overwhelming. I thought I was on,
I'm sure,
on Californian state television at some point, just because people were having amazing experiences of spontaneous healing. And it's nothing to do with me. I'm not really the healer. It's awakening that potential in people, and it literally just liberated them because they believed in it, because they'd heard from somebody else who'd heard from somebody else, and that current, that current of belief and faith and power in not me, but in the power of spirit in them to heal, just worked its magic, and that was the way it evolved.
Yeah, it's almost like there was an outside force that was, you, and they wouldn't have maybe learned those things from your message without speaking with you.
Correct. Yeah, I was just a catalyst, really, for them to connect with that deeper part of themselves that wanted something, so it was amazing. People had spontaneous healings, businesses turned around in a couple of weeks, relationships came together, it was just magic. It was like watching, Merlin at work inside all those people, like the magic of their lives suddenly woke up and started to work in the ways that they'd always wanted it to. So it was very beautiful. Perfect. You're all aboard the dream train. It's like, you can dream it, it'll happen, So it was like that kind of thing. It was really good.
That must have been such a cool experience for you, from your point of view.
For sure. Right?
Must have been so cool.
It was. I remember going out with the whole group of people, and we went to the supermarket. And everybody felt just such incredible joy from just living. It was like this flow of energy. It's like that pranic field, or the quantum field. You're suddenly tapped into it, and the possibilities are unlimited. It was really cool.
That's beautiful. So I'm going to get into some questions about your sleep.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you've been pretty in tune with it for a long time. It sounds like. What helps you relax or unwind at the end of the day?
Generally, look, I've had this practice for around 30 odd years that I do both morning and night. I do yoga. So I do yoga before I go to bed. I have a really specific set of exercises I do. I've been a student of both Yoganandas and the Dalai Lamas for around 30 years. And I've had a lot of guidance into, okay, do this and things will work out in a really good way to put you to sleep. So I've had this practice where I do some physical routines, some asanas and some Pilates just to kind of loosen up to my body. Mm-hmm. And then I do some more relaxing type exercises in the evening. I always have a bath. The Japanese bathing habit is one to be envied. They really, their baths and the shower, the way they set up, for example, bathroom is like a mini onsen. So you can really relax and, have candles or music or light. Just beautiful. And so the yoga's asana is a bath, a meditation. And when I meditate, I have a slightly different meditation routine in the morning and the evening. So in the morning, it's much more active. So I do like a Kriya yoga and also a love, light, and peace meditation that Kevin Shayam and I developed for these groups that we're working with. And then in the evening, I do a more Vipassana style, I still do Kriya yoga because I've practiced it for years, but I do a more Tibetan, Vipassana style practice in the evening, which is a lot more relaxing. And then I do my dream yoga routines as I'm going to sleep. So I've done it the same way for years and years and years. And it's great. It really helps me stay awake in the dream state and to really tune into it. And not always. There's some nights when I'm just dead tired and I got to sleep. So you go through phases. I mean, that's the thing. I think you go through phases and seasons in your life where sometimes you are so spot on, and other times you just know, hey, this body needs a rest, or you have a week where it's really intense, and you just actually you want to sleep. Full stop. So, but I've had some very intense practices over the years, and I've been guided personally by the Dalai Lama in some cases.
Wow.
And also done the practices of Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche's, dream yoga. And they've been so unbelievably helpful in understanding that you can practice both in your dreams as well as when you're awake. So, yeah. So anyway, so the simple things, a little light exercise before you go to sleep. A perfect bath, some meditation. And generally I have both my wife and I love drinking Dandelion coffee, for that sort of liver detoxing effect. So we drink that. But usually about an hour before I do the yoga routine, because my body needs that kind of, absorption process. I don't want to have drinks juggling around inside me when I'm turning upside down.
Right. Dandelion coffee. I'll have to give that a try sometime. I've never even heard of that.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Very famous for its, detoxing effect. So very popular here in Japan. So yeah.
All right. I'm going to check that out. Do you kind of went over your rituals. Do you have any like sleep aids? I know some people, especially here in the States, reach for like I'm sure you're not reaching for an Ambien or a pill that puts you to sleep, but like, are there any like, anything that you use?
my wife and daughter, definitely, I have a habit every night that my wife and I put my daughter to sleep. So we always read her a story. And there's something beautiful about being with a child when you're going to sleep. It's just so lovely for the heart. So she always goes to sleep first. I do have a pillow that has a special, I guess, curvature for my neck and
Okay.
head. So yeah, I mean, it's not if you looked at it, it looks like a normal pillow, but it's got just that extra little indentation to help the curve of my neck. So that's good.
Okay.
I've always slept with the same, pretty much the same pillow for a long time.
Okay. That's cool. I have a question here in a little bit that I'll get into that. So I'm interested to hear a little bit more about that in a minute. Do you share your bed, or do you have it all to yourself?
Yeah, it's a great question. My wife would love to have our bed all to ourselves, but my daughter sleeps in the same room, and she has since she's little. Like me, she has very vivid dreams, and she's been able to recall them and talk about them when she from when she was very little. So, and it was the same with me. So she insists that we all sleep in the same room, and that's kind of a very Japanese tradition too. So we've got a separate bed for her beside our bed, and it's supposed to work that mum and dad get to be in the bed by themselves and the little one sleeps in the bed but it's not, it doesn't really work out that way. She likes being in between us. She likes moving around during the night, and if she gets upset from dreams or something else, she likes to have mum cuddle her. So that's kind of how it works out. We shift a bit.
That's very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
This might be kind of a silly question, but it's just on here. Do you keep a dream journal?
Yeah. I keep for years, I've kept a pen and pad beside my bed. It's been a habit I've had for a long, long time. From the age of, I had these really intense dreams when I was very little. So from the age of about 8 till 28 or 30 maybe. So for about 20 odd years, I kept a dream journal. I used to have 3 dreams a night. On average, sometimes many more. So I was dreaming about, you can work it out. It's about 1,000 dreams a year. And that's like 20,000 dreams in a dream. So I had a stack of dream journals over those years that I used to keep so dedicatedly because I was so curious about it. I did a lot of dream workshops with, like I say, I did a lot of advice from everybody from the Dalai Lama to Denise Lin, and did a lot of dream workshops and shit. They were great. They helped me talking to me personally about ways that I could actually wake up in the dream and lucid dream and that kind of thing, which was very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. I'm still trying to get better at that, but I do have it near my bed, so I guess that's the first step.
Yeah. So I do, I do things that are always classically recommended, like, have a little sip of water before you go to sleep, because then you do wake up to go to the bathroom, and you customarily you're going to remember whatever it is that you had last. And I've done lots of practices where I'll wake myself every couple of hours, and sure, that really prompts you to, dream recall. And the lucid dreaming, is quite a technique all on its own. So that's Anyway, so yes, I do keep. It's not really a dream journal. It's just a pad and a pen where I'll just write down a key word. For example, like last night, I had a dream that I was in a cave. So I just wrote down cave, and then when I wake up, I can recall every detail about the dream. So it's that kind of thing. I don't really wake myself up because my dreams. So I have so many dreams. I tend to want to dream them, so because they're all part of the practice that I'm doing.
Gotcha. Are you more of a night owl or an early riser or something in between?
Yeah, definitely an early riser. I admired the Dalai Lama from afar and then very close up for a long time. So I looked at his routine, and he's a very early riser. He rises around 3:34, and I've tended to adopt that habit over a long period of time. So I used to, when I was really into these practices intensely, to sort of build a strong routine, I was getting up 3:34 and doing dream work and meditation till about 6 a.m. every morning. And now I still do that, but I wake more like 4:30 and do the practices till about 5:30. So it's not quite as intense as it used to be. And it's sort of the same at night. I don't go to bed that late. It's sort of around 9:30, 10:30, and do the practices around that time. So it takes me about the same time morning and night. It's about an hour in the morning and an hour at night.
there's something about getting up real early in the morning. It almost seems like you have a longer day. There's more that goes through the day.
Sure, absolutely agree. I think when you get up, and there's a whole different vibration. You tend to, they talk about the cycles of dreaming, and there is a particular cycle that you are in when you wake up around about that 4:30 mark. And so there are different types of dreams that you remember. So I've definitely noticed that over the years, that if I wake myself at 5:30, I tend to remember a different type of dream than if I'm awake at 4:30, which is quite intriguing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool. Do you track your sleep? I know you have a pretty solid routine, but do you actually track any of the hours of sleep that you get?
You mean to wake myself up, or to?
No, as in it's like some people have like an app to show them how much sleep they've gotten. Do you just go by routine?
Oh, I see.
Solely to get your.
Yeah, I've pretty much programmed it into, I did it all without apps for so many years that I never really needed an app to do it. So I can wake myself at times that I want to wake up, and even though I use an alarm, I've realized I wake about 3 to 5 minutes before the alarm every day.
Wow.
And if I want to wake at a certain time, like very early, like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., I just set it in my mind before I go into it, and then I wake up at that time. So yeah, I've kind of worked on that over a lot of years without apps, and I did try the apps to see whether they worked, and I tended to wake just before the app, and often, it's sometimes quite amazing. It's like 60 seconds before the actual app is time to go off. I'm there. So it's an interesting, curious.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Huh. How many hours of sleep would you say on average do you get? Is it pretty much the same every night?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same, because I'm going to bed at 10 and waking up at 4:30, so it's like 6.5 hours. If my daughter lets me and goes to bed at the right time, then I'll get 7. The ideal is 7, but it rarely works. It's usually 6.5 to 7, and that feels perfect. Like I wake up and I'm very awake and feel good. Sometimes if my wife and I are out hiking, or we do a lot of mountain climbing, sometimes I need 8. But it depends what I'm doing. But basically, it's pretty typical. 6.5 to 7 hours, which feels right.
Perfect. Okay, what is your favorite sleeping position?
On my back, like a mummy.
Okay.
For whatever reason, that yoga asana shavasana, it's like I sleep like that, exactly like I do in that. Yeah. And I also find that a really easy, there's lots of things that say men should sleep on the right and women on the left and all that sort of stuff, which I totally understand as well. But for me personally, when I'm in that particular kind of yoga position, I can go quite deep into sleep and dream yoga pretty fast and stay pretty conscious and aware, or not, depending on how tired I am. And that position really doesn't. My wife said many times, you just don't move. You're out like a log, and then you're still. So so mummy position.
That's very cool. So arms by the side, just very
arms by the side, like shavasana. Palms upward, feet just slightly apart, palms upward, head back, and so then I go into this sort of meditative state as I'm starting to sleep. And sometimes that yields great practices, and sometimes not. And I just work with it, whatever arises.
Now you said that you're very still within your sleep. What about your wife and your daughter? Are they both very still as well, or
no,
they move around?
They're extremely busy. My daughter is extremely restless, and my wife would prefer to be very still, but My daughter, calls out for my wife in the middle of the night. So they're quite restless. I'm aware of it sometimes, and sometimes I'm not. So they're transferring beds. Like I said, I mean, my daughter starts off in the middle of us when she goes to sleep, and then she migrates down to her own bed by herself, and then she calls for my wife at different times when she gets a little bit, upset about something, or just generally wants the company. So,
yeah. That's cute.
Yes, she's very cute. My daughter is definitely cute.
Okay, and this is the big question. What interests you in dreams?
Yeah, that is a big question. The fundamental thing I've learned over the years is that, in the beginning, you kind of start off with dreams that are really quiet. You tend to look for the aha moment in the dreams, and then over the years, as I used to share this with different dream practitioners, they always said to me, go into the dream practice. So, and I was curious about what that meant and how I could go about it, and definitely now the dreams I love the most are the ones where I can actually do a spiritual practice in the dream. So even that's basically where you program yourself to practice whatever, and you can practice anything. It's like lucid dreaming. When you're in the lucid dream, the universe is your oyster. You can do an infinite number of things when you lucid dream. And it's the same with your spiritual practice. If you've got a particular spiritual practice that you really want to adopt or you want to go deep into, if you understand how to do that, you can do that in your dreams. And infinity and beyond, it's literally like that wonderful Toy Story quote, which I think is priceless, is like your dreams are like that. They can take you beyond what you might normally do in your dream, in your regular practice. So for people who are starting meditating, for example, their body's restless and they've often got lots of restless thoughts, but in dream practice, they could actually set themselves up to have a wonderful dream practice where they're meditating with a still body and their thoughts have ceased and they enter a light state or a light body or a rainbow body or whatever it is that makes them vibe. They can go that way, and I think when they learn how to do it, it's really quite amazing.
Very cool. Very well said. It's very interesting to hear from you as well, someone that's very, very in tune with their dream life.
Well, look, it's been part of, like I said, I mean, it's been part of my life since I was a little kid. Because when I was 2, I had this, I mean, that's part of what the book or my story in chaos to clarity is about. So that's the book that's been put out by Sacred Stories Publishing. And they chose a particular story of mine called A Divine Mother and a Pearl. And when I was 2, I had a dream every single night for an entire year, nonstop, that I was this monk walking across this bridge to a monastery, to this amazing place. And then the bridge fell out from under me. I was with a companion on the bridge, and it fell into a chasm, and I fell into the cosmic sound and the cosmic light. And I still remember it as vividly as when I was 2. And it happened exactly the same over and over again, night after night after night. It didn't stop. And as a young kid, look, it wasn't that cosmic falling into a chasm every night. I was terrified. I screamed, and my parents, I kept explaining to them, I'm falling, I'm this, and I couldn't describe I didn't know what a monk was at age 2. And they thought I was epileptic, and they took me to loads of specialists, and I got EEGs, it was early days back then. They didn't have headsets like Muse or some of these other brain measuring headsets, but they gave me all sorts of EEG tests, eye tests, ear tests, brain tests. They couldn't figure out anything. And after a year, one of the doctors, this lovely doctor called Erin, that I still remember because I think she saved me from going on and on night after night with the streak. She just said, oh, look, he's too hot. Take all his clothes off and his blanket, just leave him. So basically I slept naked for however many months at the age of 3. So that was by the time I was 3. It took an entire year for this to happen. And I had that same dream. So it made me incredibly curious about what is this consciousness that's in me, that's this continuing consciousness night after night that gave me all this, that, that not only can disrupt my life, but obviously had a very potent message of some sort, and I mean, I wasn't thinking that way at 3. I was just amazed that I had that same dream. And I just kept saying to him, I didn't know what the monk was in the dream. Mm-hmm. I just kept saying to my mum at the time, I want to learn Japanese, and it's something to do with it. I want to go to the East. I want to go to another country.
Wow.
And she was quite worried about me at that stage, because I was pretty young. So she found me a Japanese teacher when I was 4.
Cool.
And years later, she told me that, so it was some months before she passed away, actually, and she said to me, look, I've got something I want to tell you. It's like feels like one of those movies where somebody's going to tell you a secret that they've been keeping all their life. And she said, look, that dream that you had every night for a single year, she said, she said, I didn't tell you this at the time, because she said, I was worried you might go off and be a monk if you found out what a monk was. And it is true. I wanted to be a priest up until I was at age 13, but she said, I didn't tell you about, monks or anything else at that stage. She said, because when I was a teenager, she said, I was, it must have been when she was around 15 or 16, because it was around the time of the World War, and she was sent down the south of New Zealand to a place called Nelson to sort of just stay out of the way, because they were worried that New Zealand might get invaded. So she was in an orchard, and she was picking apples. That was a job she was doing as a teenager at that stage. And a Maori elder or tohunga came up to her and asked her to, said, I'll read your hand. And Mum said the elder took her hand, and Mum felt all strain, and all these things started to unfold. And the elder told her said, you're going to have 4 children, which is true. And then she said, you're going to have, your oldest son is going to be very mystical, a very unusual child. And he's going to have a connection to a past life, which is going to be very influential in his life. And then she started to tell my mum about that past life. And so this is when my mum was 15. Wow. And so Mum said she got such a fright. So then she said, and then she started to tell Mum about our future. So not just about our past lives, but about, or in this case, about my future. And Mum just said she'd heard enough, and she screamed and ran off into the orchard. And she said she never wanted to go back there again. So there's, the connections within connections. Some of these amazing mystical connections we have. It's just mind-blowing, really. Our world is so much more of a wonderful place than we probably ever imagined.
Yeah, that is such a cool story.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild one, right?
Will you tell us a little bit about Chaos to Clarity? I know it's coming out soon. Just touch on it real quick, and then I'll have you go into your dream.
Sure. So Chaos to Clarity is it's a group of stories by different authors. So the most beautiful collection of people who are talking about their experiences of things that started off seemingly chaotic and how it led to clarity in their lives. So this can be anything. It could be loss of a loved one, struggle in life that's at the time you just feel in the depths of despair or in the deepest trouble. And in fact, when you look for the value in it, you suddenly find it's been a turning point and also a guide. It's almost like it's been sent to you to learn from. And you come into a space of great clarity as a result of the chaos. So it's not like saying that the chaos is in any way undermining you. In fact, it defines you. So it's those kinds of stories. So there's the most beautiful collection of people. And it's got a foreword by Bernie Siegel, who has done a lot of work in these kinds of fields. And it's lovely. And both Patricia and Kat, who have been guiding lights in this and putting it together, have really put together a tremendous human story, really an account of the very human ways that we deal with struggle and that we come to a space of clarity.
That sounds awesome. I'm actually pretty excited about that. I can relate to the chaos part as well.
Yeah. I think we all can.
I think we all can, yeah. But finding that clarity is, I'm excited for that. I'm sure it's jam-packed full of great stories.
It's definitely jam-packed full. There's a lot of stories in there, and it's a really beautiful thing that has been created together. It's a collective work really. So
that sounds awesome. I'm excited for that. Okay.
Yeah, me
too. Will you just kind of give us a preface of the story you're going to tell, whether it's a lucid or recurring dream, or any other details that you can put into it, and then just kind of take us through it?
Sure. Well, I think one of the most interesting dreams that I did have. So apart from the dream that I had as a little fella when I was just 2, over the years, one of the most curious parts of my dreaming has been when I've connected with other people. So in the dream. So for example, in a very early relationship I had, one of the girlfriends I had, we would dream together. So for example, we'd be in a plane and I'd be flying the plane and she'd be in the back, and when we woke up she said, "Oh my goodness, I had a dream and you were flying the plane." I said, "Yeah, you were wearing the black, but you were in the back and you were wearing a purple scarf." And she said, "Yeah, I was wearing this purple scarf," and that kind of thing, those kind of connections. So the ability to have telepathic connections and actually really go into much more of a clear state in a dream with somebody else. So in this particular series, this was a series of dreams rather than one particular one.
Okay.
I had a friend, I'll call her Rihanna because just to protect her privacy, but she and I had been in a meditation group for quite some time, and we both had our own partnerships. So I just put out this cautionary word that if you do actually develop telepathic connections with people, it can be quite challenging for your own personal relationship, because there's a certain degree of intimacy that naturally unfolds that you really don't expect. So anyway, Rihanna and I were part of this meditation group, and she at one point when I was meditating, I actually felt myself enter her body and vice versa. She entered my body. It was just such an uncanny connection, I thought. And it really, really threw me, actually, and it threw her. And we were very, transparent in the group. We were all sharing our experiences. So I said, "Oh, hey, this happened." She said, "Yeah, the identical thing happened." And from that day, for quite a number of months, we were actually able to enter each other's dreams. Now, as strange as that may sound, it was really incredibly uncanny. So things like this happen. I would go to sleep. I would dream that I was with her in a particular place, that she was wearing a particular dress and particular jewelry and so on. And then I'd be woken out of the sleep, and she'd be on the phone saying, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. It's so clear." And then she'd describe to me exactly the dream that I was having, that I was in, that she was in as well. And then so we tried. So with our partners at the time, we tried some experiments together, and we did things like, and for whatever reason, I don't know whether it's past life connection or some other, for whatever reason, it happened the strongest with Rihanna. She and I could do things like we would go to sleep and dream a card sequence. So we'd test it, and we'd have a witness. So we'd write this. So generally I'd say, "Oh, I've dreamt it." And I'd say to my partner, "Look, I'm going to write it down." And she'd say the same thing to her. And then we'd, in the morning, we'd ring up and compare, and they'd be an identical sequence of cards. And then we would, in the waking state, we would all meet up and we'd try doing card tests. So I'd put her in another room, and then I'd pick the cards and she could tell me what the cards were, and then we'd swap and so on. So we had that, really deep, powerful telepathic connection. It was like uncanny. It was so potent. And the dream state it seemed to come out of that because we were able to perfect that practice in the actual dream state. So it went on for several months. The experiences were pretty much, like I said, sequences of, testing out the ability to go into each other's dreams, to actually meet there, to do things in the dream that we could then validate with a third party, and then, witness similar things happening in the waking state. So there was a kind of blurring of the boundaries between the waking and the dreaming state. So it was amazing. It was really very precious time. But like I say, to be quite honest, it was challenging for our partners. And at a certain point, they just said, look, we want you to stop because it's too confronting. It's like there's an intimacy you have with Rihanna and she has with you that we don't have.
Right.
And that, that's fair enough. I thought that was very fair. So we stopped doing that because it's really quite confronting to have to face that on different levels, and you have to honor the sacredness of your own partnership and their own needs and desires at the time. So we actually stopped after several months. That said, it really proved some incredibly beautiful things about the power of the dream space and what you can do there.
Wow. I mean, you guys were just, curious and testing things out. So, no harm there, but I can definitely get the pressure that would put on your significant other.
Oh, definitely. No, it was definitely a challenge for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, that's such a cool story. Hearing about it is one thing, but like actually experiencing that yourself is, I can't even imagine. It's just on a whole other level.
Oh, it was certainly so potent. I mean, it's still now. It's one of those indelible memories of you just can't part for it. I've had a lot of, over the years, I've had a lot of really quite prophetic dreams. I mean, just another one that springs to mind is that I was with a partner that we were traveling to America, and I really didn't. No, she wanted to go to England. I wanted to go to America. We didn't know which way to go, and so we had a friendly argument about it and discussing which way, because we were at that stage. I was really into the performing arts, so we were in a band, and we were trying to decide which way was our music going to go. Was it better to go to England, better go to America? And I had a dream of these two dolphins, and one of them stood on its tail and flapped its fins, and the other one was swimming along beside it, and it was on a beach that I recognized. I just knew in the dream that it was in the States somewhere, and so I said to her, I said, you can go to England, but I'm going to the US, because I said, this dream is so strong. It's on an American beach. And I said, whenever dolphins appear in my dreams, they're really, really powerful symbols. So we, on the basis of a dream, we decided to go. And after about 3 days of we went to visit relatives in Palos Verdes. And after about 3 days of being there, I was down on the beach and just out in on the ocean there, two dolphins were swimming along. One stood on its tail. I'd swear it was looking right at me, just like flapped its fins, stood on the end of its tail, and it was exactly the dream. And then I recognized the beach, and I thought, oh, okay, that's where the dream was. So it was a real validation of a kind of choice at the time, and it was it was brilliant. Very, very nice confirmation of the fact that this universe conspires for your success.
That's really cool to hear. So you said dolphins are kind of just do they show up in your dreams often, or is that just when they do, it's very powerful?
No, they do show up often. In fact, years prior to that, I had one of those, ET experiences, which everybody says, oh, well, it's just something out of the blue. But in fact, this was reported all over, New Zealand television and radio, and it was witnessed by around 20, 30 people. And it was an amazing experience. And I did it with a friend of mine who was a ufologist, and he saw it as well. And it was investigated by the US. They flew jets in and all that sort of thing to try and find out what exactly was happening. So about 2 weeks after that, I was on a beach with friends, and they said, oh, they were making a joke. They said, oh, you can call UFOs, right? And I said, well, whatever you want to think, it came. And they said, well, as a joke, they said, why don't you call the dolphins? And I've been doing lots of meditation, dream work with dolphin energy. And I sat down, and so there's 5 witnesses, 5 of my very good friends who I'm still in contact with. And they, we sat down on the beach, and I said, okay. So I just sat there, and, it's just like one of these things where sometimes the spontaneous, I don't know, everything, the universe, the what person says, where your state of consciousness is at, it all worked perfectly. I suddenly, at that moment, I felt like the ocean was in my spine. And, all the work and a lot of the dream, if you look at dream yoga books, they talk about, bringing the experience into the spine, or the sushumna, or the astral spine. And I could feel the ocean in my spine. And I said, the dolphins are coming. And I opened my eyes, and my friends looked straight out the sea, and there was a pod of dolphins swimming along. But even what was crazier was the dolphins turned and swam straight in to where we were, just straight, like made a beeline right for the beach. And my friends were so shocked. They all stood up and they said, what are you doing? I said, I'm not doing anything. They're doing. I said, it's all connected. So I just said, come on, let's go swim with them. And I said, and I just ripped off my clothes and ran in, but nobody else wanted. It was a pretty wild ocean beach, so it wasn't that easy to swim in it. But I just dived in, and I thought, I'm perfectly safe. And I love swimming anyway. And nobody else went. They were just sort of, I think they were in awe. They're probably still out today. And I jumped in the middle of this pod of dolphins, and they swam around me and talked and jumped over me for 20 whole minutes. I mean, it was one of my unforgettable connections with our brothers and sisters out there in the ocean. It was just really, really phenomenal, really amazing. So from that point, you asked about the dream connection. So from that point, it's like I could really feel dolphins in my consciousness. So I dreamed a lot of them, and they tended from that point to be, really signaling moments, they're signposts in your dream space that were really quite powerful.
That's really interesting. And also, that they are extremely smart. And I don't know what kind of tests they've done scientifically with dolphins, but there was a video not too long ago of an octopus kind of in like a REM sleep state, and it was changing colors. And basically they were saying that this octopus was dreaming and changing colors. So it'd be interesting to see, smart animals, smart life other than ourselves, and kind of look into what their dreams are like.
Wow, that's so cool. I didn't know about that video. I can imagine, when they're in a sleep state, I'm sure that animals like, from the octopus to the dolphin, I'm sure that they have just as deep power and consciousness, as us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll send you that video link. It's really cool to see.
Oh, brilliant. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, it's awesome. If there was going to be a piece of advice you could give someone that is not as in tune with their dreams like myself, if you're going to give them a piece of advice, what would you advise them to do? Really, a really good question.
Basically, I think there's 3 things that you can do to help your dream state, and they all relate to the waking state. So whether you apply it in your waking state or your dream state, it's basically the same thing. And it comes from a piece of advice the Dalai Lama gave me personally. So when years ago, I sponsored him when he made his first trip to New Zealand. Because I sponsored him, I was given a private audience with him, so I could talk to him about spiritual matters. And then over the years, as I've seen him, he's given me more and more advice on the path. So when I asked him about dreams, he said, look, obviously you've got a past life connection through that dream, but the deeper part is for you to actually go into the dream and actually know that you're awake and present in the dream and deal with it on that subtle level. And what he described was that when we dream, we have these three parts to dreaming. We have what's called the gross level, which is the more samsaric or reality-based level. We have the next level is the subtler level, which is like the dreams of clarity. And then we have the very subtle level, which is like the clear light level, where it's sort of like, that's like spiritual practice in the dream. Now, so the first level is our most customary dream that most of us have, that just comes in and goes out, and you sort of think, that was awful, or that was good, or it tends to be, there's sort of a little bit of judgment, or there's a reaction or emotional reaction in it. And I think that kind of dream, the first dream, which you call, the gross or samsaric dream, which is our most common dream, is if every time that happens, it's just a prompt to see reality more clearly, to see reality with fresh eyes and more presence. And I think that is a really simple piece of advice for the most basic dreams that you have. So when the dreams, when you have those, what I call fairly ordinary everyday dreams, I think it's a kind of a special wake-up call for you in your life to say, hey, if this kind of thing happens in my dream state, then when it happens in my life, maybe I can adopt the same sort of fresh eyes and the same sort of presence and the same sort of clarity in my waking life, so that you don't take things quite so emotionally. So you can kind of learn from that first level of dream state not to be so judgmental, not to be so taking one side or another, but just to view all your experiences in life with fresh eyes and with a deeper sense of presence. I think that's a really good way to learn from that first level of dream. And then the second level that he talked about, which is the subtle level, which is what you call dreams of clarity, is those are the dreams where you're really much more aware. They can sometimes tend to be lucid dreams, or they can be dreams where you're actually getting advice, or where you wake up and you go, oh, that really means something. That was my mum speaking to me, and my mum's passed on, and that made such a big impact. So they're the dreams which are much clearer, and they've got much more vivid detail. So you're going more from the gross kind of just general average stuff into the much more clear-sighted dreams, and there's more detail. And so in the same way, you can apply it to your life, and you can say, oh, then this kind of experience in my life is helping me get unstuck. They're the kind of experiences, where you have a much, much greater insight into something that happens in your life. Things are much clearer. You feel like you're coming unstuck. You're no longer thinking, I am a writer, but you're more just deeply present. Just I am. So it's like there's much more realness. There's you don't see this world as being so real, but you start to see the world like a dream, and the dream like the world. You don't. You become much more peaceful, calm, and clear about events that happen in your life and in your dream space. So you're no longer so rocked by those kind of strong dreams that you have. You can view them with a lot more clarity. And then the third part that the Dalai Lama often spoke about was the dreams of clear light, where everything's much more subtle. And those are dreams where basically you are doing spiritual practice in your dreams. And the same thing in life. When you look at life, and you've got a lot of experiences where you think, hey, this job isn't me, or this relationship isn't me, and you want to wake up and you want the freedom to be your true self. When you find that true self, you realize it's got nothing to do with the jobs or the relationship or anything else. It's actually got to do with you. And that as you become your true self and you wake up, you become much more aware of, the quantum field, the light in the universe, the pure sounds in the universe, the amazing love that's constantly flowing. It's just that you're not aware of it. So, and the same thing happens in your dreams. You start to become aware in your dream. You might have dreams which are filled with the principle of love, or really give you the most ecstatic, blissful feeling when you wake up. Those are much more tending towards those clear light dreams where there's not so much an object or a person in the dream. It's more a state. So you suddenly, the dreamer suddenly drops out of the dream, but there's still a dream. But there's no longer judgment, which tends to be the first part of the dream. There's no longer a whole series of details that kind of consume the mind, which is more the second part, but can still be very clear. There's just a state of real deep wisdom and awareness. And so I think, when you apply that in your dreams, and you apply that in your life, I think you start to be aware. Hey, you can start to differentiate. And so you have an experience where you get angry and you become a little bit more aware of being the witness to your anger. You can pull back a bit. You're no longer in there and driving a fist into somebody's face. You're actually pulling back a bit and saying, oh, actually, I can feel those emotions, and I can feel why they happen, and I can feel some compassion for the other person, but I'm no longer embroiled in it. I can be a little bit detached. And then the second level is you start to develop some insight, and you become a lot wiser about both your dreams and your waking life. And then the third part is you're really in that flow. You're breathing the beautiful breath of love. Every time you take a breath, you breathe in love. Breathe out love. The world flows because you're doing one simple thing, like loving or being compassionate or being peaceful, and you really feel it. You feel that presence, and you feel, and that presence translates over into your dreams. So I guess what I'm saying is our dreams are just as valid and just as important as our waking life. And when you start to apply the wisdom that you receive in your dreams to your waking life, and vice versa, then they start to connect and fall in line, and there's a real deep alignment, and there's a real deep sense of presence, and the true self starts to flow both in your waking life because you feel that freedom and understanding, and the same in your dreams.
Beautifully said. I think if anybody's listening and they have not been as in tune with their dreams, they should probably, start paying a little more attention to them and looking at the subtleties of them.
No, yeah. I truly agree. Look, it is such a cool, deep, and wise process to be in touch with your dreams, because when you think about it, they are you. They are giving you signs and symbols, and they're showing you the light. They're saying, look, here's something that's deep in your subconscious that's coming out and coming through, and wake up and pay attention. And when you do wake up in your dreams, that is a magical day.
So in closing, I had one question for you, and you can add more if you'd like, but my question would be, if you could bring back anyone into your dream life and spend a day with them in your dream life, who would it be? What would you do, and why?
What a wonderful question. Definitely the first person that came to mind was Yogananda. I've had a deep love and devotion for Yogananda my whole entire life, really. I mean, I feel moved even just talking about it. He represented to me the most beautiful ideals of humanity and love for people, and also his love for Divine Mother, which is a similar path to the one that I've felt. I really feel that love and affection of a mother for people and for life. So I would just simply go and spend a day with him, and I'd want to meditate and go surfing. He loved surfing, and I loved the ocean. Play tennis with him because he played tennis, and I love tennis too. And just I think this generally turn into them, and I've done that in my dreams. I've had dreams, really direct dreams, of both Yogananda and Babaji, who brought the whole Kriya Yoga system through for Yogananda into the West. And so I've had dreams where they've appeared to me in my dream. And in fact, years ago, I was on a path of both. I was doing Kriya Yoga and also a path of alchemy. And Yogananda appeared to me actually in a dream and then in the physical just once. Wow. And he said, "You've got to choose. You can't do both paths. Now you've got to choose." So I chose Kriya Yoga, and it was just so obvious, it's the only one time he's appeared physically in a. It's like a dream visionary state where you dream that he's talking to you, and you wake up and he's still there in the physical in your room, and then he disappears. That happened just in my whole entire life. So that was a precious moment. So he's the one I'd choose to spend the time with.
Very, very, very cool to hear about that. Well, I got to thank you again so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I think anybody that's listening is going to be able to pull a lot of value from what you've said.
Oh, I totally, it's just amazing and so cool to meet you. And look, if I had a parting piece of advice, it would be as you go to sleep, there's a practice I've done for quite some time where as I go to sleep, I imagine a beautiful pink rose or chakra at the Visuddhi chakra, which is the throat. And so I visualize the most beautiful, beautiful feeling of love and beauty at that point. And then I draw the energy up and into the third eye. And at the third eye, I visualize a light that starts to expand into my sleep. And I go to sleep in that way, visualizing that, taking that feeling of love and beauty, bringing it from the throat up into the third eye, and then watching the light as I go to sleep. And invariably that translates into my dream. Quite often I dream that I'm doing that in the dream. And when I dream that I'm doing that in the dream, that's actually a trigger for me to know that I'm lucid dreaming, and and that in some way it's going to translate into my waking life. So I had an experience some time ago where I did exactly that. And in my actual lucid dream, I dreamed that Babaji was there, so Yogananda's Param Guru, and he showed me a halo, golden halo, with a blue astral tunnel in the middle of it, and right in the middle of that was a star unfolding. And then that day, when I meditated later on, that happened in my meditation. This beautiful golden halo opened my third eye. In the middle of it was an astral tunnel which started to draw me in. And then right in the center of that astral tunnel was an absolute perfect 5-pointed star. And I was absolutely blown away. It manifested as clear as in my dreams. And so that's kind of one of the ways that our dreams and our waking life and our spiritual practice can all merge. So I wanted to leave you and whoever's listening with that thought and that feeling.
Cool. I'll have to give that a shot.
Yeah, it's really wonderful practice. So go to sleep, visualizing the light in the third eye. Very, very simple, beautiful practice.
I love it. I'll give it a shot. Again, Altair, thank you so much for your time. I have a feeling that we might record in the future.
Oh, I'd love to.
I know you've got lots of dreams. I'm all ears.
Oh, wonderful. It's so magic to talk to you, really. Such an honor and such a privilege. So thank you.
Likewise. Thank you, Altair. Have a great day.
Okay.
One night in the stillness, a star in the heavens connected its wisdom to you.
All right, friends, that's going to do it for episode 10. For anybody listening that didn't catch it or isn't aware that the gentleman that Altair would spend a day with in the dream life was Yogananda. Yogananda was an Indian monk, yogi, and guru, coined as the father of yoga in the West. Basically, he's the guy that introduced millions of people to meditation and Kriya Yoga. I'm sure there's at least one person that may have laughed at that. I took that straight from Wikipedia. I have zero clue about the history of yoga, so I learned something new today. But that's who Altair would spend a day with in the dream life if he had the choice, and they would play tennis and surf. Sounds rad to me. The music that you're listening to in the background is from Altair's SoundCloud profile. The song is titled Maya, and in the description it writes, I composed this song for my daughter Maya's birthday on September 18th. She is a star, and I treasure this song for her. Quick story before we wrap this up here. While Altair and I were sending back emails, he sent me a chart, like a graph, showing his different brain waves. He uses a device called a Muse. It's an EEG device that shows what your theta waves and delta and alpha and gamma waves are doing. And after we were talking about coming on the podcast, his gamma waves went bonkers. According to Wikipedia, there's popular theory that gamma waves may be implicated in creating the unity of conscious perception. Anyways, it's just cool to think about. It would be awesome to see throughout the day what everybody's brain waves are doing. Alright, I'm done talking. Thanks again for listening. Please, if you could, support on social media. If you or someone you know has a story that you think would be a good fit, have them email me, allaboardthedreamtrain@gmail.com. Get on the website. You can contact me multiple ways there. And any type of support that you could do would be awesome. Sharing the podcast would be the absolute best thing you could do. Thanks again for listening. Hope you have a great day. Until next time. Hey Alexa, All Aboard the Dream Train podcast. Subscribe.